Up 3 dark flights to his Betty by gallows, to prepare for the last of all tucking in hallows. As Vex lifted his foot to begin the ascension, his noddle was throttled with nightmaric retention. Each scuffed, crooked step, wise cracked and creaked, deriving much joy from the poor boy's defeat. This embittered old stairway had survived countless bouts of kickings and scrapings and screamings and pouts. Holding fast to the banister, his knuckles turned pale. Vex crept and Vex stepped, and his hands clutched the rails. Past evidence of struggles marked his dim upward trail, with deep scratches and fragments of small fingernails. Halfway to the top came a trembling sensation. From beneath his cold feet rose a violent vibration. Like an oncoming train closing in from behind came the twink locomotive, tweaked out of her mind. The twink loved her bedtime like a piglet loves swill, snuggly ugly tucked tight in a cold bedsheet chill. She plowed over Vex in an offensive blitzo, nearly derailing the sleep-bereaved schizo. He lifted his head post-hit-and-run dash just to catch a brief glimpse of a twink and doll flash. They zipped to the bathroom with a brush, rinse, and spit, jammied up in 2 shakes, into their bedroom they split. A mom shout from below gave a push from behind. "I'll be up for a bed check in 10 minutes' time." Vex took a look back and then forged ahead, a farewell trip to the washroom to get prepped for bed. He scrubbed his gloved face as hot steam filled the room. Letters dripped down the mirror, squealing out the word doom. The face that stared back through the reflective glass morphed into a fiend with a serpentine laugh.
"You are done for,"
it groaned with a raving mad chuckle.
"Tonight you'll know horrors that'll make your core buckle. So adieu, frazzled youth, and enjoy your crash dive, for this may indeed be your last night alive."
The lad's gut then did woozle, and his feet they did foozle. Backing over the door jamb, he crashed on his caboozle. He lay stunned on his back in the dark hall of glum, barely lit by 1 light bulb that flickered and hummed. Vex sat up and shook off the spill he had taken and hunched down the pathway alone and forsaken. Up ahead he saw light leaking out across the floor through a gap in the bottom of Sister Twink's door. He approached with reluctance this port to Twink's cell, painted black like her soul, with a sweet girly smell, covered in unicorns, rainbows, and fairies, with their eyeballs rubbed out by Twink to look scary. Inside he spied and heard Mum and Twink's gigglings, Mum smooching Twink's cheeks, calming pre-slumber wigglings. Green and lamenting he turned and proceeded down the crookedy hallway, sick and defeated. The passage dead-ended at a dungeony door, which sealed up the doom room that the sad boy abhorred. Vex was dwarfed by the wicked Brobdingnagian barrier that seemed normal by day, but at night was much scarier. Huge with black hinges of rot-casted metals and wood that was splintered like sharp cactus nettles, a keyhole for which no one held the key, and a rusted old knob that no one could turn free. With a trembling hand and red sleepless eyes, he grabbed for the knob, but to his shock and surprise, the knob grabbed him first by the wrist with a twist and squeezed like a viper the boy's arm in its fist. It spun the boy around in a full Nelson grip, with one door slamming swoop in the room he was flipped. As Vex flew through the air, all his faith was dismissed when he fell to his old bed's soft downy abyss. Trapped in its quicksandish nightmare snare, he sank deep in the sinkhole of feathered despair. He struggled to swim to the edge of the quag, to be barfed from the bed in one bile-belching gag. He squished on the floor and shook off the delusion, but the room where he sat was no childish illusion. The walls had been stripped, tacks and hooks left behind. All the bookshelves were emptied to destimulate his mind. Just dust, cracks, and cobwebs, 4 walls and 8 corners. The old bed's bent posts stood like pallbearing mourners. His only escape was one archtop stained window, separating the world from his dim, clambered limbo. As depressingly heinous as all this may seem, there was yet one more furnishing that made Vex's soul scream. More frightening than armies of mummified mimes, and it casted its shadow on Vex at all times. Towering nearby, 8 monstrous feet tall, and bolted with stainless steel screws to the wall, lurked a demonic, ornate old grandfather clock that chimed pipe organ dirges by Sebastian Bach. Chiseled from rotten old dark cherry oak, with a blackened blood finish that would gag a ghoul's throat, the top had been carved into 2 sharpened horns, and its trunk of a body was covered in thorns. The face of the beastie was cratered and hanged, with a jagged cut mouth that was hungry and fanged. Its time-telling hands were crusted with age, and each minute scraped by as its clockworks engaged. Warped planks in the floor cracked under its girth. At its base, grisly claw nails dug in with all worth. Inside its caged torso, a pendulum hung that clunked and kerthunked and chopped as it swung. The clock drooled and grunted out
9:58,
with a deathly green smirk on its face full of hate. Vex heedfully hid from the grand talking thug, just as Mom stormed the room with a scowl on her mug. Her blood pressure soared as her veins began swelling, a standard operation which preceded much yelling. She uncrossed and extended her long, mumly arm, unrolling her long, fetid finger of harm. With a point to the clock, she nagged, "Look at the time! Why are you awake? Have you plumb lost your mind? Get your raggedy bum up and into that bed," Mom yapped as the veins in her finger bulged red. His wetted red eyes began drooping and dripping, but Mom butted right in before he could start yipping. "Yeah, I know," Mom snubbed. "Your room's full of harm," as she dragged the boy bedward with a pinch to his arm. "But this closet is dark, quite empty, you see? No disfigured freak spooky that's trying to break free. Nothing's creeping outside, the window's locked tight. Just the wind, an old tree, and a shadow in the night. There's no pus-covered mutants that hunger for brains, and no leather-clad lunch ladies with their hair made of chains. There's no green viral ooze seeping in from the ceiling to burn off your skin while you're writhing and squealing. Don't fret nor concern about reptilian ferns that strangle small boys with their twists and their turns. Your room has no big bearded rats with skin rashes, nor big-headed spookies with snakes for eyelashes. There's no conjoined babies with scab-covered faces to blind you and gag you with dirty shoelaces. Nothing will get you while I dim the lighting. Now get under those sheets before bedbugs start biting." Then Mom put a small kiss in the palm of her hand and covered the boy's mouth with loving remand. "I wish you as always the sweetest of dreams, but try not to wake me with your late-night screams." Mom pulled the boy's covers up and over his chin. As Vex lay on the bed, rigor mortis set in. Well constrained in his straitjackety blanket cocoon, Mom rolled her numb eyes and set out from the room. The lad's pupils, like pinholes, followed Mom, full of doubt, knowing sadly, once she left, there'd be no getting out. She took one last look and then left him behind, enmeshed in his merciless, woe-begone mind. As Mom dragged the door closed, the last thing Vex saw was the hideous, slow creep of an in-reaching claw. It sank its hooked nails deep into the wall with a mutilating motion and lacerating fall. It sliced its way downward, a sickening sight, scratching over the switch which turned out the light. The door snapped like a trap and groaned out a moan as the clock chimed 11.
All alone.
Vex twittered and lay there in deranged contemplation, praying vainly in the darkness for one drop of salvation. But the deafening black silence was all that returned. Thus all promise be forfeit, and all faith be adjourned. He began counting lines in the age-crackled ceiling, an unfruitful attempt at diverting bad feeling. For each split, slit, and crevice joined and spread like a web. Then they formed the word dead time in the pealing overhead. He shook himself wakeful and squirmed from his rack, pacing to stave off sleep's sly sneak attack. Barely buoyant from iterant pinches and slaps, The lad's spooky patrol was now verged on collapse. The last of his strength was spent dragging a chair to the decaying old window for some icy night air.